All right, let's get into it. Today, we're talking about a football philosophy that's, well, it's kind of turning the tactical world on its head. It's a style where instinct and connection are everything. It's called football relationist, or simply relationism. And to really get our heads around this, I want you to think about this question. For forever, right? We've seen football through the lens of formations. You know, the 4-4-2, the 4-3-3, these rigid shapes on a pitch. But what if that's all wrong? What if the real secret to unlocking a team's potential isn't about where players stand, but how they connect with each other? Okay, so here's our game plan for this explainer. First up, we'll tackle positions or connections. Then we'll look at how you actually train this instinct. We'll see what it looks like in a real match, the chaos in action. After that, we dive into the data signature to see if we can prove it. We'll check out 3 different flavors of relationism and then wrap it all up with the big takeaway for coaches.
All right, Section 1, positions or connections. This is all about redefining the football pitch. And look, to really get what relationalism is, you first have to understand what it's not. This is the fundamental clash of ideas we're talking about.
So on one side, you've got positional play. This has been the dominant way of thinking for years, and it's all about geometry. Seriously, the coach basically draws a map, carves the pitch up into zones, and tells each player, you occupy this space. But relational play, it just rips that map to shreds. The main rule isn't occupy space anymore, it's support your teammate. Your spot on the field is only defined by where the ball is and where your teammates are. It's a total paradigm shift.
Okay, so let's put a formal definition on it. Relationism. It's a philosophy where a player's movement is decided by their connection to the ball carrier and their teammates, not by some pre-assigned zone. And this is the key word. The system emerges. The coach doesn't design the team's shape. It bubbles up from the quality of those connections in real time. The rule isn't go stand in that zone. It's support the guy with the ball or, hey, create a third passing option. It's fluid, it's dynamic, and for the other team, it's an absolute nightmare to try and predict.
All right, that brings up a pretty big question, right? If you're not telling players stand here, then what on earth does training look like? How do you go from drills to in-the-moment decisions?
And this quote just nails it. The coach gives principles rather than positions. The whole job of the coach just changes completely. They're not a director, choreographing every single move. They're more like a facilitator. They create problems on the training pitch and give the players a set of principles to solve them together. Principles like support is always close, like 3 to 5 meters away, never 15.
And you can really see that change in how they train. The old way, think cone drills. Players running through patterns without any opposition, basically just memorizing a map. The new way is all about constant live decision-making. You throw them into small-sided games with overloads, like a 3-on-2. That forces them to read each other, to react to the situation, not just follow a diagram. They're learning the actual language of connection, but they're doing it through competition.
Okay, so you've trained the instinct. Now, what does this organized chaos actually look like when the whistle blows on match day?
Well, when the team is building up play from the back, there's no set pattern. You won't see the same sequence twice. Players are just moving in relation to the ball, creating options on the fly. And for the team defending against this, it's a total nightmare. How do you shut down passing lanes when the lanes themselves are constantly shifting? Now, there is a risk. The whole thing relies on players being on the same wavelength. If one player misreads the play, the whole structure can just collapse. That's why raw football intelligence is so important in this system.
And don't think this is just an attacking philosophy. No way. Actually, the most famous defensive example of relationism is something you've definitely heard of: gegenpressing. I mean, think about it. When a team loses the ball, they don't retreat into some preset defensive shape. The trigger is simply losing the ball. The 2 players closest to the action immediately swarm the ball carrier, and everyone else just reacts based on their proximity. It's pure, it's instinctual, it's relational defending.
Okay, this all sounds great in theory, right? Chaos, instinct, connections. But is there any actual proof? Can we see this stuff in the data? I mean, how do you even measure instinct?
Well, one of the key metrics they use is something called network entropy. And don't worry, it's not as complicated as it sounds. Basically, it just measures how spread out a team's passing is. So, a team with low entropy funnels almost everything through 1 or 2 key players. Think of a deep-lying playmaker who gets all the touches. But a team with high entropy, they spread the love. The ball moves through this wide web of connections all over the pitch.
And when you look at the data, it's pretty fascinating. An analysis of over 800 matches found that teams like Verona, Nantes, and Bologna, they have the most distributed passing networks in the game. They don't have one single hub player. The responsibility, the connection, is spread across the entire team. This is like a clear, statistical footprint of a relational style of play.
But wait a minute, hang on. We just talked about Liverpool and their gegenpressing being a prime example of relationism, yet their network entropy score is actually among the lowest. They do rely on specific passing hubs. So what gives? Is the whole theory bunk? Is the data just wrong?
And the answer is that their relationalism just shows up in different data points. It's not in their passing network, it's in their movement and their communication. Get this, they rank number 1 in something called rotation quality score, which is all about how fluid and unpredictable their players' positional swaps are. And they're second in adaptation rate, which basically tracks how well they solve problems on the pitch by talking to each other peer-to-peer instead of waiting for the coach to shout instructions. Their relationalism is in the press and the rotations.
So what this really proves, and this is what's so interesting, is that relationalism isn't just one single rigid style. It's a philosophy, right? And it can be expressed in a bunch of different ways, depending on the coach and the players you've got.
And this table just lays it out perfectly. You've got 3 totally different flavors. You have Liverpool, where the relationism is instinctive, it's pure-led, and you see it in their gegenpressing. Then you have that legendary Ajax team from 2019. That was a pure collective. They had that super high network entropy we were talking about, a totally flat, distributed team. And then you have a team like Real Madrid. They operate in more of a structured framework where the coach sets a loose hierarchy, but the individual stars within it are given the freedom to create those relational connections on their own.
So, after all that theory and data, what's the bottom line? What's the practical application here? If you're a coach or even a player, how do you actually start building these kinds of connections? Well, the analysis boils it down to 3 clear, actionable steps. First, and this is huge, prioritize decision-making. Ditch the shadow play and the cone drills. Every drill should have an opponent and a decision to be made. Second, you have to explicitly train communication. The language of connection, the little shouts, the hand signals, the nonverbal cues, that's a skill and it needs to be coached. And third, and this might sound weird, but simplify your set pieces. Your team is already processing so much complex information on the fly, you don't want to add cognitive overload with some super complicated corner routine. And that really brings us to the big final question. As football tactics keep evolving, what is the future? Is it about coaches being architects, drawing these really detailed, rigid maps for their players to follow to the letter? Or is the future coach more like a gardener? Someone who cultivates the environment, who nurtures the connections and instincts, and then just lets the team's true potential emerge all on its own. It's a pretty cool way to think about the future of the sport. Thanks for tuning in.